the one thing I wanted to get out this morning is we have corruption, and we have it bad in Horry County. We have it bad in South Carolina. I think it's the worst in most other states. And we need you to help us fight. And what I want, the number one thing that I want from you as neighbors, friends, and everything else, is I want you to be my grassroots. I want you, when you get home, I want you to speak to your neighbor and tell them, hey, I met David Pascoe. I want you to look in voting for him. If not, I'll call Karen. Karen, come talk to him. I want you to speak to your neighbor. Tell it at Sunday school. Tell it whenever you're at lunch. Tell everybody. I want you to be my grassroots. And I want to cause a grassroots swell. I may be wrong, but I don't think Jimmy Richardson, and I like Jimmy, but I don't think he's ever prosecuted a death case or prosecuted he's not usually in there prosecuting. And Pascoe is. And it takes a lot for me to get behind someone. I call Pascoe, and this is just my little thing, I call him my modern day Bat Dillon. Because he don't take no junk. So that's what it's about today. I wanted you to come in. I want you to meet him. After we finish doing this a little bit, you'll walk from table to table. But I really need you in your community telling people, if you like Pascoe, if there's something you don't like about Pascoe, come to me, I'll fix it.
Or we'll fix them, right?
So anyway, that's what this morning is about. I thought we would have a little bit more, but some people have different things in doctor's offices and things like that. I'm going to turn it over to John, my partner in crime.
Thank you. Partner in crime, but just so everybody knows, I'm presumed innocent until proven otherwise. And I'm not guilty just by association to the lady in the pink pants. Just so everybody knows. And I don't think I need this microphone. So I'm going to shut this down and tell you all, thank you for coming this morning. One of the greatest people that pushed for justice in American history said these words: anybody can be great because anybody can serve. And this morning I was reading in my Bible, it says in Psalms 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And what I desire, and what everybody that's ever walked on planet Earth desires, is one thing: justice. The same man that said that anybody can be great because anybody can serve said these words: justice too long delayed is justice denied. That was Dr. Martin Luther King. And we have a man in South Carolina that has stepped up to serve our great state that believes deeply in justice. How do I know that? Because on my wedding ring has the scripture Micah 6:8. It says this. The prophet Micah asked this question: what is good and what does God require of me and you and everybody in this room? And here's the answer: to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. The reality is, none of us can do that. So as I was meditating this morning, if you're outside of Christ and you're longing for justice, that's a dangerous and scary place to be. Because the Bible says the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. And because of Jesus, we don't get the justice that we deserve. All of us deserve the death penalty. And there's nobody in this race for Attorney General that has pushed for justice in our state more than Solicitor Pascoe. I want you to know three things about Solicitor Pascoe. Number one, and this is very, very simple and it's very basic, he cares. Somebody once said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And Mr. Pascoe, Solicitor Pascoe, he cares. He cares deeply about justice. He cares deeply about doing what's right. He cares deeply about the state of South Carolina and about victims' rights, advocating for justice in our judicial system indiscriminately. Indiscriminately. It matters not the color of your skin. It matters not your political background. It matters not who your first cousin is, who your daddy is, who your uncle is, who your political consultant is. It matters not. He cares deeply about justice. Not only for people that are alive here on planet Earth today, but he cares deeply for justice for the unborn. That's the first question I asked him when I got to know this man over 5 years ago. He cares deeply about the unborn. Psalms 139 says, all the days of our life were ordained before one of them came to be. It says, you knit me together in my mother's womb. He cares for the unborn. He cares deeply for the unborn. The other thing I want you to know about Solicitor Pascoe is he's a friend. And the Bible says there is a friend that loves more than a brother. In fact, Proverbs 17:17 says that a friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. How do I know he's a friend and a brother? Because about 4 weeks ago, I was in Houston, Texas with my mom and Indy Anderson. She was getting treated for cancer, and this man calls me not to talk about politics, not to talk about corruption, not to talk about anything other than to say 3 words. I love you. I'm praying for your mother. That's the man we need leading our state. That's the guy that we need prosecuting corruption and crime and upholding justice in our state. And his name is Solicitor David Pascoe. In the Bible, David, who wrote the Psalms, is referred to as a man after what? God's own heart, right? Well, if David in the Bible was a man after God's own heart, David Pascoe in Horry County and in the great Sandlapper state of South Carolina is a man after justice. And that's why we need to put him in office, in the Attorney General's seat. And I'm hoping and I'm praying and I'm counting and I'm banking on everybody in here getting behind him. And let's make sure that the people of this great state get what we deserve, which is justice. Justice too long delayed is what, Mr. Pascoe? Denied. Justice denied. Ladies and gentlemen, please support my good friend, our dear friend, a man after God's own heart, a dear friend, a brother that's born for adversity, that loves deeply, that cares about people, Solicitor David Pascoe. Support him to be our next Attorney General of the great state of South Carolina. We're counting on you, and together we can, and together we will. God bless everybody. And if you would, stand with me in agreement as I pray for David. Come on up here, David. I'm going to pray over him and ask God's provision and blessing over this man. Carrie, come on in here. Okay. Neil, come here. Carrie. I've also learned one thing. When Karen Mitchell's somewhere and she calls an audible, you run that play. All right, so Neil, you're going to pray over David.
David, we come here together today to lift you up and also lift up this entire nation, Lord, to bring more godly people to governing. God, we ask you to lift up and govern, to act more godly, to stand up and have faith over fear, that these problems can't be won at the voting booth. They got to be won at the pulpit. God, we have taken you out of our state, taken you out of governing, and look what we've become. So, Lord, we ask for your forgiveness. We go in repentance, and let us stand before your name in this great state, in this great country. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Sir.
We will let you talk.
All right, a little bit. I really don't want to talk. I say we go now. Anything I've got to say is going to be a letdown, just like my height compared to Matt Dillon's. You know, you would compare me to somebody that was 6'7". I appreciate that. I really want to thank you guys for coming out here this morning. This really means a lot to me. I want to thank John Gallman, and most importantly, of course, the Horry County campaign manager for the Pascoe for Attorney General campaign, Karen Mitchell. Thank you. My family came over from the old country of Sicily. They're very mean people. So I knew that I needed to get a mean campaign manager for Horry County. So I basically got a Sicilian running the campaign. I am David Pascoe, and I'm running for Attorney General because I want to make South Carolina, and I'm going to make South Carolina safer and less corrupt. And if anybody else had said that, David Hucks would laugh. But you know I can do it. I've done it before, and I'm going to do it again. I have seen the rat's nest, first-hand view of the rat's nest up in Columbia, South Carolina, and I know how to exterminate it. We took down a political kingdom and took out politicians that cared more about themselves than the voters and citizens of South Carolina, back when I was your special prosecutor during the corruption probe. We convicted and removed from office the Speaker of the House for treating his campaign account like a piggy bank. I convicted the President pro tem of the Senate for laundering money to his campaign account. I convicted 2 majority leaders and removed them from office. And I sent to prison the former chairman of the House Judiciary in South Carolina when I was your special prosecutor. That's how corrupt Columbia is. I also issued a grand jury report that I would love for you guys to go online and read. It's there for everybody to read, including the legislature. We issued that report from 12 grand jurors, citizens across the state, that outlined the corruption in South Carolina and outlined the problems with our weak ethics laws. A grand jury report our legislators saw fit to ignore and pass no legislation to fix our ethics laws. And my friends, that is a red flag that something's wrong in Columbia. When 12 citizens on a grand jury issue a report outlining details of what our problems are, and the legislature completely ignored it because they want those weak laws and weak ethics laws. Well, I wanted to go further than those convictions that we got on the Speaker of the House and everybody else, because we all know in this room, corruption runs deep in Columbia. I wanted to go further, but the Supreme Court of South Carolina told me I had to stop right when I was about to make some more moves. They told me I had to stop because they said, well, you're not the Attorney General. So I'm running for Attorney General to get back to Columbia and finish the job that I started. And we are going to clean up Columbia, and I'm going to make sure that no legislator, no senator profits from their position ever again. Ever again. A lot of people, what do we have going for us in this race? This is what I can promise you. This is why we're going to win. There's a lot of people, the only argument my opponents seem to want to make, and I've already got 2 establishment candidates running against me. And they'll say, well, Pascoe just became a Republican to run for Attorney General. Well, all right. What they fail to evaluate is that David Pascoe has been going across the state for the last 4 years to talk about corruption and fighting corruption and the things we need to do to fix Columbia. I went, before announcing to be your Attorney General a few months ago, I had gone to over 30 events to talk about corruption across the state. Guess which party guess which party invited me to all 30 of those events, Johnny? The Republican Party. That is when I learned. Not one Democratic Party across the state or subgroup across the state invited me. It's always Republican. And that's when you learn the same thing that Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, and everyone else has learned. If you're going to fight corruption in South Carolina, it's going to be with the voters of the GOP. Not necessarily your elected officials, but it's going to be with the voters of the GOP. So it was an easy decision to be a Republican. And you know why it was also more easy for me than anybody else? One thing I can promise everybody in this room, and when you look at my record, you'll see this is true. I am always the most conservative person in the race. I've been an elected solicitor now for over 20 years. And I was always the most conservative person in the race, and that's why Republican sheriffs and Republican clerks of court supported me even when I wasn't a Republican. I got all the Republican support. And I'm the most conservative person in this race too. Let's look at the record. I was the first public official in South Carolina in 2018 to call for the firing squad as a means of execution in South Carolina. When I did that, they laughed at me. I got calls from Republicans and Democrats, left and right, laughing at me. And after 5 years of working with both sides of the aisle, We got that passed through the legislature. I am the only person running for Attorney General that has put people on death row. I am the only person running for Attorney General that has sent someone to the executioner. There was a cop killer by the name of Michael Motti. I sent him to the firing squad about 3 months ago. He was the last person to get the firing squad. My opponents, one of them, his only experience with the death penalty is dropping the death penalty. Dropping it on a cop killer, dropping it on someone who brutally raped and murdered a 2-year-old boy. My other opponent, he has no criminal experience whatsoever, at least I don't think so.
Being a criminal still.
To my knowledge, the only experience he has was answering an indictment in federal court for harvesting stem cells. Speaking of life and abortion, I am the only candidate running for Attorney General that's taken on liberal judicial candidates in South Carolina and stopped the liberal judicial candidates in South Carolina. Y'all remember James Smith? He was the Democratic gubernatorial candidate against McMaster and Evans 8 years ago. He ran for governor as the Democratic candidate 8 years ago. Well, he ran for circuit court judge in Columbia a couple of years ago. Great guy. All right, he's a soldier. He's an American hero. Really, I mean that. But he's a liberal. And I didn't want him to be a judge. Has nothing to do with how I personally feel about you. It's business. He was a Planned Parenthood endorsed, pro-abortion, anti-capital punishment, judicial candidate, liberal judicial candidate. I went to Republican after Republican to make sure they would not vote for him for judge because he was unopposed. Every single one of them in the legislature told me they were going to vote for him. So I coordinated the statewide effort with others, but I got it together. I came up with a plan and I coordinated it to go to the voters so y'all would scare your legislators into not voting for him. And even though Smith was unopposed, he didn't get elected judge because of the voters. What did my opponents do when I was putting that coordinated effort together? One of them stayed home and tolerated it. The other one, who was part of this one, was a state senator, a lawyer legislator, voted for James Smith to be a circuit court judge. Not once, but twice he voted for him. Gerald Malloy. Does anybody know who Gerald Malloy is? Anybody? Look him up. Very liberal, obstructionist, Democratic senator down the street from here in the PD, in the Darlington area. We could not get any bills passed in the Senate because he was obstructing all pro-law enforcement, all pro-victim bills in the Senate. And exactly a year ago, he was up for election against a young man, a conservative farmer out of Darlington named J.D. Chaplin. And exactly a year ago, I was here in Myrtle Beach at a conference, sitting across from Republican legislators, and I asked them, you say we can't get any of these bills passed because of one person, Gerald Malloy, in the Senate. And they said, yes, that's right. I said, will you help me take Gerald Malloy out as senator? They laughed at me. Two of them said he can't be beaten. Another one, who's supposed to be a quote-unquote conservative Republican, said, no, Gerald Malloy's my friend. All of them said that he couldn't lose. 1 month later, last November, I endorsed J.D. Chaplin. Not one Republican, quote-unquote conservative, including my opponents, not one of them endorsed J.D. Chaplin. J.D. Chaplin won by 70 votes and is in the South Carolina Senate today. So what we've got going for us in this campaign, without a doubt, is we are the most conservative candidate in the Attorney General's race. And as you've heard, I've got not just a record for how we're going to clean up South Carolina, but I've got a vision. This is what I'm going to do. We are going to focus on 3 things. Crime, protecting our children better, and corruption. Those are the last 3 things I'm going to talk to you about. Crime, protecting our children better, and corruption. As far as crime, we are going to stop allowing violent criminals, my former law enforcement officers, having that revolving door of getting out of jail on bond every time they get in trouble. We're going to stop that. We're going to get better bond reform, and we're going to have prosecutors throughout this state move to revoke bonds on repeat offenders. All right, that's going to be what we're going to do. We're going to stop it. You know, I hear all these liberals say, oh, there are too many people in the jails. Well, if they're violent, that's where they need to be. They need to be waiting for their cases to be heard in jail. We're going to treat fentanyl dealers like they're domestic terrorists. No more fentanyl in South Carolina. No more deals for fentanyl traffickers. And now that we finally have an administration that we can work with, we're going to continue to work on getting illegal immigrants out of South Carolina. So those are the things that we're going to focus on with crime. Protecting our children better. What can we do and what do we have to do? I'm advocating for the death penalty for child rapists in South Carolina. Those that laughed at me 5 years ago, laugh at me again, but that's going to pass in South Carolina. We're going to get the death penalty on child rapists. We're going to increase the conviction rate on child pornography cases in South Carolina. I'm extremely happy that, or pleased, that the cases that we've seen in the news lately are actually being prosecuted by the feds, because the conviction rate at state court is abysmal. And that's on all of us. I'm not blaming any one person, and I'm not getting involved in the governor's race as they're going back and forth. That's on all of us. We need to do a better job on that. And then the third thing we're going to do, Karen, which is very, very important after the story you just told me about the person trying to steal your golf cart, we're going to implement the youth mentor program at a statewide basis. Now, this is not a novel idea. This started over 30 years ago when I was a young prosecutor, 32 years ago. We're going to get it back going statewide. What that program does is it takes children who have lacked structure in their lives, and they're getting in trouble for petty offenses like shoplifting. Every juvenile murderer or shooter I've ever had starts off as a truant. Every single one of them. So truancy, shoplifters, small crimes. We take those children and we give them the opportunity, instead of going to DJJ, where they're just going to learn to be better criminals. I mean, when you send a child to DJJ, you're almost giving up hope, unfortunately. But instead of doing that, we're going to assign them to churches and youth organizations, and they're going to have mentors, and they're going to have to report back to the solicitor's office on that child's school life, on the child's home life, and keep that child busy and let them know that they're cared for. That's, without a doubt, the best diversion program I've ever dealt with in my 30-plus years as a prosecutor. Finally, corruption. You cannot pick at corruption. You have to crush it. And I firmly believe that an attorney general's primary job is to be where corruption needs an adversary. And that's where I'm going to be. As I said, my first job is going to be to make it absolutely impossible for these legislators, particularly the lawyer-legislator uniparty in South Carolina, to profit off of public funds. I'm tired of hearing about legislators, and again, it's usually lawyers who are legislators, taking their hands and putting it into the public pot to enrich their own wallets. I'm going to fire on day one as Attorney General every single lawyer legislator that has a government contract with the state of South Carolina, whether it's on the Insurance Reserve Fund defending state entities, or these litigation retention agreements like the opioid crisis agreement. I know y'all probably seen how we made $300 million on a lawsuit against Big Pharma a couple of years ago on the opioid crisis. What you didn't know is that the state got a bunch of lawyer legislators on contracts so they could make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of that. Well, when David Pascoe is Attorney General, all that's going to come to an end. It's amazing. I'll share this with you. I've been talking with attorneys throughout the country to get advice on how they do it in Virginia and Georgia, even as far out as Idaho, and even the West Coast. Every one of them laugh at me when they say, Pascoe, David, how is it that your boards approve these lawyer legislators to have these contracts? And I laugh back and say, what boards? The Attorney General's office does that. That's the only board. Well, they say that it's an inherent conflict in their states. Well, guess what? If it's an inherent conflict in the state of North Carolina for lawyer legislators to have government contracts, it's a conflict in the state of South Carolina. And I'm going to fight and continue the fight that I started 5 years ago. I think I'll end on this. on changing the way we elect judges in South Carolina.
Pascoe, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I'll go into a little bit deeper about how we even elect them in South Carolina. Speaking of lawyer legislators and legislative corruption. In South Carolina, we're one of only 2 states where the legislators elect our judges. The really big problem is that there's something called the Judicial Merit Selection Committee, the JMSC. Now it's made up of 12 individuals. It used to be 10. The majority of whom are lawyer legislators. So here's, in essence, what we've got. We've got lawyer legislators screening the judicial candidates, weeding out who gets to run for judge. The same judicial candidates that they then run on. That is inherently unfair. And I'm going to backtrack even a little bit more and explain to you, because y'all look actually really interested in this issue, so I'm going to explain something else to you. I firmly believe that the reason we have this next problem is because we are one of the only states where legislators elect the judges. In South Carolina, if you're a lawyer legislator, you are basically absolutely protected from having to go to court between January and August of every year. This is what that means. That if you are a lawyer in the legislature, say and practice criminal law, say your name is Todd Rutherford. Has anybody ever heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, or Leon Stavronakis, or who's a lawyer legislator up here? Well, any of them. Any of them. Yeah, Luke Rankin. And you have a criminal client, the state nor the judge, and that's what's amazing, can order that lawyer legislator to come to court between January and August. And then what they do is they have hearings in September, October, November, and vacations, and you can't get them to court then either. So it is virtually impossible sometimes to get them to come to court. It is blatantly unconstitutional, in my opinion. I have transcripts when I do a PowerPoint presentation, which I will be doing, remind me, in Myrtle Beach in a couple of weeks. We'll get you all the dates and everything if you want to come out there. I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation go over examples. One example is where I have a transcript where a lawyer legislator was literally telling the judge, I'm going to let you call this case because I want to do this guilty plea, but I'm not going to let you do this bond revocation where you want to lock my client up, Judge. And the judge says, what right do you have in that? He said, well, I've got legislative protection. And the judge says, well, I don't know that that is really the spirit of legislative protection. And he says, yeah, it is. And there was nothing the judge could do about it. So a lawyer is telling the judge what cases he can call and can't call. So I am fighting, and I've been fighting for the last 5 years, to change the way we elect our judges in South Carolina by taking the lawyer legislators off the Judicial Merit Selection Committee. My opponents, silent. One of them, again, is a lawyer legislator. So when I say I'm running against the establishment, I'm running against the establishment. Finally, I'm going to end by telling you this. I think it's so funny you mentioned Matt Dillon, because my two TV heroes are Matt Dillon and Kojak. All right? I'm like none of them. You know, one of them's 6'7", and the other one's too cool for me to be like. And I still have enough hair to where I don't have to be like Kojak. But I also have another hero. When I was 15 years old, I read a book called The Pursuit of Justice by Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor. And in that book, it's got a lot of quotes that I love, but one in particular that I have on challenge coins that I had in my office. And the quote is, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, we strike a blow against justice everywhere. When we tolerate what we know to be wrong, we strike a blow against justice everywhere. One thing I can promise you I will never do as your Attorney General is tolerate any wrongs anymore. When I'm your Attorney General, the days of toleration will be over. So again, I want to thank y'all for coming out here. Do me a huge favor. You got the cards. Scan the website. Look at the rest of the plans. We're going to start posting videos now on the websites. please tell all your friends about the campaign. If you're on social media, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and all the other stuff. I'm not a social media kind of guy, so I have my sons and others doing that for me. But we're going to be posting a lot of videos, and I know that we'll be touching on all the issues that you guys are interested in those videos in the coming days. So, like I said, go to David Pascoe for scag.com or just scan it off the cards, and I'll answer any questions anybody has except for Brian Sweeney. Yes, sir.
Why is it you failed to mention that you're part Irish?
Yeah, that's right. The gig is up.
Yeah.
You know, I got a new, those 2,3-me ancestors, I got a new analysis just yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah, but my Southern Italian keeps going up, and the Irish keeps going down. I'm like 65 to 35. But you're right.
We'll get you into St. Pat's anyway.
It'll get me into St. Pat's. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Hey, I'm trying to get the Irish vote too. So you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. We need to get some Irish vote.
Okay, so new that walked in is Terry and Bridget Fowler.
Hey, how are you?
They are wonderful people, and he's retired law enforcement. She's retired. She was administrator for Morris City Hall, and they are wonderful people. And I just want to make sure that you knew they were there. Is there anybody in here? Okay, can you call out everybody's name?
That's dude. That's sir. That's ma'am. Yeah. Hey, friend. Hey, buddy.
No, I can call them all out.
Okay.
So David, I have a question.
Yes,
You
sir.
mentioned Bobby Kennedy, and you mentioned, well, you didn't mention, but it reminded me of John F. Kennedy. Could they get elected in the Democratic Party today? Either of them?
No, I mean, because, Bobby Kennedy was a devout, pro-life Roman Catholic. Where, are there any pro-life Democrats? There used to be.
Yeah.
Remember Casey, I think it was up in Pennsylvania, and there were some others. I don't know of any now, so no, I doubt it. And, Bobby Kennedy, the reason he's my hero is because he didn't care who you were. He didn't care what political party you were. If you did wrong, he was going to prosecute you. Period. They went to him once and said, you can't prosecute this person, Mr. Attorney General. Why? Well, your brother doesn't want you to because it's your father's best friend. And he just asked one question. Is prosecuting him the right thing to do? And they said, yes. Then he said, prosecute him. The guy got prosecuted and went to prison. He didn't care about making friends, and I don't care about making friends. I got all the friends I want. I just want to do the right thing. Yes, sir.
One last thing. You said you were the most conservative Attorney General running in the race, which I agree with. Name some other politician in the state more conservative than you are. Is there anyone
That are in elected office?
that's in an elected office in this state that's more conservative than you are?
I've got some friends like Joe White.
Joe White, I'll agree with that.
Some of the Freedom Caucusers are.
There are few people in this state more conservative than you. Is that not true?
I believe that to be
That's
true
true.
in my heart. And again, just look at the record. That church diversion program I told you when I'm going to start. Well, I did that at the local level. So we're going to do it at the state level. That's, to me, and that's not even a liberal or conservative thing. Yes, ma'am.
Right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, on Monument Avenue, or not far from Monument Avenue. I went by that Robert E. Lee monument every day on my way to Benedictine High School. I went to a parochial school, just like, well, Kennedy actually didn't go to a parochial school. But yeah, every day I went by those monuments.
So when did you end up in South Carolina?
1985, I came down here to go to the Citadel. And I worked harder in those 4 years than I did the 12 years earlier because, like I said, I wanted to go to law school. And I didn't think I'd ever have the grades or the scores to go. So I worked real hard. And at the end of 4 years, I graduated, I think, in the top 5 in the class. I know I was number 1 in political science. So,
So you love South Carolina?
loved, yeah. I stayed down here. Loved it. Do we have a couple of minutes? I'll tell you a quick story about the connections of Richmond. And y'all want to hear about Michael Motti, the guy sent to death row 4 months ago? Y'all have time?
Yeah.
Real fast. Because there's a connection. I actually speak about this. It came to me as I was talking to the Fraternal Order of Police a few weeks ago. So, 1983, I read the book called The Pursuit of Justice by Bobby Kennedy. In 1983, that's when Michael Motti was born, right outside of Richmond, Virginia. Before that, 1983, I went to a school called Chamberlain Elementary School. No lie, after I mentioned Kojak, this is going to be funny. I'll never forget, third grade show and tell. Guess who I went as for show and tell? Lieutenant Theo Kojak of the South Manhattan, whatever. I had the hat, the lollipop, everything, right? Michael Motti went to the exact same elementary school as I did, Chamberlain Elementary School, about 10 years after me. I knew that I wanted to be a prosecutor, as I told you, when I was 15. Michael Motti also professed what he wanted to be when he was 15. He got into a 9-hour standoff with law enforcement outside of Richmond. When they finally arrested him, he told them in his written statement, "My dream is to kill a cop." He went to DJJ. He got out. He was arrested for assaulting a police officer. Went to prison in Virginia. During this time, I'm a state prosecutor and already successfully tried hundreds of violent crime cases. In 2004, that is when I filed to run for solicitor of Calhoun, Orangeburg, and Dorchester counties. Calhoun being the important county in this story. 1 month after I filed for solicitor, Michael Motti got out of prison in Virginia. A few weeks later, he murdered a man right down the street from his home with a machete. He stole a car, stole a gun, went to North Carolina. He was captured on videotape with a bag of beer, getting in a bag, shoots the store clerk at point blank range, puts his fingerprint on the register, shoots him again to make sure he's dead. For $60 and a beer. Drives to Columbia. He carjacks someone that night in Columbia. I theorized at his trial that the only reason he did that, didn't kill him, was because he was either low or running out of ammunition. He drives down 26, heading towards 95. He stops at Calhoun County. He started casing the gas station. When he was casing the gas station, the Calhoun Sheriff's Office was called. Well, by the time they got there, Motti ran through the woods. And in the woods, when he ran through, he got away, he found a pond house. He broke into the pond house. Nobody was there. Breaks into the pond house, and he immediately knows that he has pay dirt for his lifelong dream. Because he knew that the house belonged to a police officer. The officer's photos were all up. His police files, that's where he kept them, was in his pond house. And he had a cache of police weapons, including an automatic rifle. Motti laid in wait. When Captain Jim Myers showed up at his pond house that night to check on it, he executed him. He burned his body. He stole his truck and some of his weapons and drove to Florida. When he was in Florida, 2 police officers and a canine were in the car. They knew that the truck was stolen. They didn't know why it was stolen or who stole it. They just knew this is a stolen truck. So they pulled the truck over. Motti gets out of the truck with the rifle, an automatic rifle, and runs for a while, but then surrenders. When they arrest him and take him back to the headquarters, that's when the police officer realized this is a cop killer. And he started to just get emotional, thinking, we stood no chance if he decided to fire at us with that assault rifle. This was a real assault. This wasn't, the little less assault. This was an assault rifle. We didn't stand a chance. He literally goes up to Motti, sitting in the chair, and says, "Hey man, you don't have to say a word. I just want to thank you for letting me go back to my family tonight." And I'm going to tell you, since there are no children in here, and I apologize for this language, but it came out in court. Do you know what Michael Motti said to the police officer? I think he said, "You're welcome." I think he just shrugged, said whatever. He looked right at him in the eye, and I had the officer testify to this in court. He said, "Mr. Motti told me I only had 2 bullets left in a 3-shot burst, and I couldn't get you, your partner, and that fucking dog." Now, I tell you all that because that's the epitome of evil. And before the trial, Jim Myers' wife asked me, beautiful woman, and I loved her. You love her. She's still Beautiful woman, great human being. She asked me to plead Michael Miney to life without parole. And she did that because, y'all, real fast, death penalties are in the news a lot right now. In fact, Mr. Frederica just tried calling me, but death is different. They are wars for prosecutors when you file for a death penalty and try to get the death penalty, and it should be. A person's life is on the line. My point being, you know as a prosecutor, you guys know this in law enforcement. Law enforcement's under attack like never before in a death penalty case. Prosecutors are under attack for everything from misconduct in office to malicious prosecution, everything. You know it's going to be a war. She came to me and asked me, will you please consider life? And I said, Amy, any other case I would do it. But if I don't stand up for a police officer who was executed because he was a police officer, if I'm not willing to fight for him, they're going to say Pascoe won't fight for him. And she respected that, and I took the case to trial. I got the death penalty, and he was executed 4 months ago. I bring that up because, again, one of my opponents, you come up with all the excuses you want. I don't understand how you don't fight for a murdered police officer. So, anyway, yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a scoop or something on that judge whose house was burned down and she had some kind of ruling on the election commission? And
She did, didn't she? Yeah, but
yeah.
I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds on this because I've spoken to the judge's family. She's a First Circuit judge. I was just with Chief Keel last night. I spoke with him the day of the fire. Right now, I am told the reports of arson, there's no evidence of arson at this time, but they are treating it, obviously, like it could have been arson. And because of her position, and I will say this, I do know this, she has received death threats in the past. So because of those things, even though there's no evidence yet of arson, they're treating it as such, and they have 24-hour security for her and her family. Her husband, who's a war hero, he fought in Vietnam, highly decorated war hero out of Vietnam, 80 years old, already had a bad foot, had to jump from the second floor and broke his leg, so he's going for surgery today, so we should all have our prayers for him. Yes, ma'am.
So, what can you tell us about the election commission that was going on there that was with the executive director?
Yeah, the only thing I know, Johnny, is what we've read in the newspaper on that one. I don't have any inside scoop on that one. I don't know that I want any inside scoop on that one after.
It concerns us because election integrity and safe elections are really important to the foundation of our country.
And that's why I disagree with those who say not to turn over the information. I've publicly stated after I was asked that question several months ago in Dunes West, whether I support it or not. I gave the honest answers, I don't know, because I hadn't looked into it. But I've looked into it since, right after that meeting. They do it in the majority of other states. Why can't we do it in South Carolina? Because there's nothing more important than proving the integrity of the election.
It makes you very curious as to what is going on.
Yeah, because you can redact sensitive information. We do that every day in courtrooms across America. So, and that's what they're doing in those other states. Right next door in Georgia. Am I not right? In Georgia, they release make the information transfer. I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm in favor of that.
So, I would like to ask you to, and from listening to you, I can tell that you will pay close attention to all of the issues in South Carolina. But that's one that we really need to have scrutinized to make sure that at the midterms and going forward, even locally, that we have very safe elections.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's an issue all over the country, but South Carolina needs help.
Yes, ma'am. The best way to do it is transparency.
I have a question on your opinion as an Attorney General on attorneys being guardian ad litem and the system kind of building in the lawyers pick the guardian and all of that. Do you think that we should go back to the way it used to be, where guardian ad litems were only paid for their mileage and a little bit of their time, and they were not attorneys.
Well, because they couldn't make money, so lawyers didn't want to do it back then. I
Exactly.
know this, we had a lot less controversy
We sure did.
years ago, so I think we should look into that.
I worked for the Department of Social Services for many, many years, and, once attorneys became involved and judges, it turned into a whole profit scheme where, the woman that's just doing it to volunteer really is looking and making sure that child protection. And I think with the judge down in Charleston and then with the RJ May, like, why didn't we make sure those kids were safe? Like, RJ May went a year and the Attorney General knew about it, but no one protected those children in his house. Should there not be some security?
The average person, though, even in this room, addressing what, and I've been volunteering a lot in family court, and I've learned a lot, and to what Pascoe and you were saying is back when 2007, 8, 9, whenever, and I'm not taking away from you, and you can correct me. We had so many lawyers. The lawyers didn't have enough jobs. So I've been told, Luke Rankin went and passed this thing that now guardian ad litems must be lawyers. So it's not like whenever we were growing up, if you heard of a guardian ad litem. A guardian ad litem usually was a retired school teacher, or somebody in school, somebody known in the community to be good and everything else. And they did it because they wanted to out of the good. And they looked after the child. They weren't for the mother, they weren't for the father. So when Luke did that, and you correct me, they have immunity. They don't have to go to the home and see the children. They don't have to go see anything. And I know one of a little girl who is just a hairdresser, and the guardian ad litem ran up a $70,000 bill, and they never once went to the house, never saw the mother with the children, never did any of that. So that. I mean, I know you knew about it.
I don't.
You didn't.
I didn't. Yeah, but that's something I'm gonna look into now.
It's a whole. I feel like I worked for the Child Support Enforcement Office back in the days with Judge Kennan and Judge Abbott. And I would always get picked as the temporary guardian. I would go to the house, I'd get the police reports, I would do what they needed me to do. And it was about the children. Now it's about how much billable time can I get so that I don't have to, and who I know within the legislator or who the judge's friend is if it's Judge so-and-so's friend that you're investigating.
And I don't know enough about it to give you opinions or anything, but it brings up an important point. This is why I say this to groups. I think I'll say it tonight. The most important election in the race is Attorney General.
Amen.
Amen.
And the reason for that is it's the only position that can change the culture of corruption in Columbia, and it's the only position that when you bring that information to me, that's the position that can do something about it. Take that to the governor. You'll never see the governor. All right? And there's nothing the governor can do. The treasurer, the secretary of state. You take that to me as the attorney general. First of all, I'm going to listen to it personally, not an assistant. And then I'm going to get people a lot smarter than me that I've hired, that I already know who I'm going to bring on, and we're going to look into stuff like that, and we're going to make sure it's fair and it's done right. It's the only position in the state, y'all, that can do that stuff. When I talk about, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but when I say I'm going to fire lawyer legislators from contracts, I can do it as Attorney General. Sorry, but it's the only job that can do it, and I'm going to do it because they're the sole hires of these positions. And again, I have no desire to make friends. I've made all the friends I need to make in this world. I'm going to do a couple of terms as Attorney General. I'm going to get this state squared away, and then I'm going to Florida or something. I don't know, Myrtle Beach. I'm coming up here to Myrtle Beach. And,
Well, I have another question for
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
I'm on a board of a public charter school authorizer. We're of higher ed. There's two currently in the state of South Carolina under the statute for public charter schools. You have the state districts. We have another district that the corruption is so bad, but the legislators didn't take it to the Attorney General. They took it to the legislative audit committee. So, and I don't. Do they have any muscle other than filing a report? Like, what about criminal charges when they voted on record to give a for-profit company?
And all they can do is refer it for prosecution. But you brought up another good point. In the interest of time, I wasn't going into my entire plan. Again, y'all, please go to the website and get people to read it, send it to your friends. I'm establishing on day one, what only the Attorney General can do, what's called a public corruption unit. And it's going to be with funds already in the Attorney General's office. I'm not having to ask for any more funds. It's going to have 8 prosecutors, 2 or 3 investigators. And I'm not going to I'll give you another example, because you're talking about in audits. The legislature doesn't decide what a crime is. And the Senate doesn't. And I'm going to remind them of that. I do as the Attorney General. So, for example, which conflates your issue a little bit, but it's the same type. Y'all know that there's a House Ethics Committee, and you know there's a Senate Ethics Committee, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to go to a hearing.
That's right. Not only that.
They're exempt.
Not only that, but here you go. So
Ask Rosemary if she likes food play.
No, don't.
I can already tell she's a huge
Don't.
supporter. So, like, just one thing the PCU is going to do, the Public Corruption Unit, they're going to look at every single statement of economic interest and every campaign disclosure form that legislators have, because they're all online. And this is what they're doing, John. Go read them. They're putting on there representative such and such, $5,000 to my American Express card for reimbursement.
Yeah.
And they're not putting what the reimbursement is or anything else. Hey, buddy, I've seen this game during the corruption probe. I took people down for this. Well, here's the problem. The fox is guarding the hen house, because that complaint goes to House Ethics. Or if it's a senator who's buying suits with his campaign account. Then again, that complaint goes to the Senate. Well, I'm going to remind them that crimes are decided by solicitors, law enforcement, and the Attorney General. And my public corruption unit is going to flag all those reports, and they're going to bring it to the unit, and I'm going to ask those representatives, exactly like in the internal audit you're talking about, I'm going to say, all right, I don't care what y'all are doing in Senate ethics. I don't even care if you have a hearing. I don't care if you have a hearing in the Senate or House. You don't even have to have it. You need to explain to me why this isn't a crime. And then when they say, well, we're not going to tell you what those reimbursements are for, I'm going to say, no problem. You're subpoenaed to go testify to the state grand jury. The days of toleration are over. And I'm not being mean about it, but it's just not fair. It's hurting us when we have legislators up there that care more about making money than they do representing us. Okay? And again, if Johnny or I did that, because we have to file state ethics, they'll catch you. You'll get a nasty letter. You'll get a nasty letter.
You got one.
Yeah, you'll get a nasty letter saying, and it's rightfully so, I'm glad. I made a mistake like 10 years ago. I sponsored an event, and we put down, my treasurer put down a contribution. Again, you're not allowed to give contributions with your campaign account. So I got the nasty letter, and I sent back, my bad, here's the form, it was a sponsorship. Legislators, they're putting down contribution all the time for stuff. Buying flowers for people with their campaign accounts, buying suits, buying it. Days are over. The Attorney General's office is going to decide what a crime is. Not the Senate, not the House Ethics, and not the auditors.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
Anything else? Again, please go on the website. If you do Twitter, do it. Or X. I guess it's called X now, right? That tells you how out of it I am. I still call it Twitter. Facebook, all that. Follow us, because we're going to have a lot of good videos that I think you're going to be really interested in. Hey, I got one. I did one at the Freedom Fence Line podcast in Campobello, South Carolina. And the last question they asked me about was the Heritage Act. So we'll get that to you. I'll get Karen to send you my answer on that. Okay. Thank you all again. I'll stick around
And
and
he's
answer any other
never
questions.
dealt in gold bars.
Yeah, I've never done. I don't have enough money to do that. So, But thank you all very much. Y'all have a great morning. Be sure to come out.